Hi everyone, I'm Veronica and I'm a customer success manager with Mixpanel that's based out of Singapore. And today joining with me, we have my colleague that's based out of the US, Pete. And together we'll be going through number one, some of the more notable trends within the Web3 world and possibly its impact on the industry. And then in turn, where those people in the crypto world should be channeling their focus to during this difficult time or period of time. And then lastly, of course, how then do you utilize double down on your retention and hopefully find out some hidden insight that can really go a long way into enhancing users' loyalty. So I think just to kind of start off, right, we want to also highlight some of the current state of things in the crypto world, given that it's been nothing short of a whirlwind year, right? But just some more of the more notable things that's worth mentioning is, we saw this very long drawn crypto winter, which honestly lasted a bit longer than anyone ever predicted, right? And just when we were starting to see a glimmer of hope because our prices were kind of recovering a little, we kind of also had to go through this tragic Terra crash back in May this year. And then I think recently, probably all of you have read the news by now. What's really more shocking is the recent FTX saga, which really saw an exchange that was kind of poised to be the biggest contender to the incumbent Binance file for bankruptcy in recent weeks. So all of this has really kind of took another hit on, the Web3 world and the crypto organizations. And as you guessed it by now, right, crypto prices has once more fallen. So all of you will be guessing, what a better time for us to kind of release this video, right? So with all this that is happening, I just wanted to also kind of get Pete's opinion on his take on this. And then of course, where, Pete, you see this going, given that I do know that you work with some of the more prominent crypto exchanges out there.
Yeah, thanks, Veronica. So yeah, first off, it's obviously been a really challenging year for crypto companies and retail crypto investors alike. So to take a quick step back, definitely if you look all the way back to the summer of 2020 until the fall of 2021, we saw an immense amount of retail and institutional interest and investment grow in the space. NFT platforms, crypto exchanges, DeFi apps, all sorts of applications of blockchain technology. So from my perspective, it seems like as soon as the macroeconomic climate kind of shifted into a period of tightening, in other words, central banks raising interest rates around the globe, we really started to see the tide recede, as they say. And, in the flurry of the bull market, it seems that, as you mentioned, Veronica, there were a number of firms making some irresponsible decisions, in some cases with retail customer deposits. So this has led to some very troubling news about the industry. And as we see as things shake out. So where are we now? Definitely, frankly, sitting in a state of waiting to see where things land. But obviously, we're really working with our customers to use data to drive decisions through this objectively really tough period. So not trying to add to the doom and gloom of the moment. So I do want to focus on what crypto startups can do to make the most out of the current conditions moving forward. So on a more positive note, I think this leaves a huge spotlight open for the crypto companies that are really and have been truly building for their end users and prioritizing user experience. And so the opportunity there is immense, and to examine what made successful, happy users in the last bull run, what are the characteristics of users who have continued to stick around, and how can we continue to iterate on those experiences so our loyal users really continue to build on their crypto journey with us, and making sure the top of funnel is really primed for if and when the next cycle of crypto adoption comes around. So yeah, would love to hear some more thoughts from you, Veronica, and just curious to what kind of advice you're also giving to your customers thus far. And then, yeah, of course, we'll jump into some actual examples of how we can get at this analysis.
Yeah, so I know like you gave a very good rundown of how all things started, and I really don't want to like sugarcoat things, even though I know like it's pretty gloomy at the moment. And the reality is that in the past few months it really hasn't been the easiest for most of my Web3 customers, and actually anyone in the Web3 space, right? Whether or not you're an investor, whether or not there's someone who's having a lot of high hopes for this industry, right? And then I think what I'm seeing is that a lot of people are kind of rethinking their biggest bet during this difficult time, right? And then with that in mind, I thought, I could share some of the tips that I too have, kind of given some of my crypto customers based on my observations and also my understanding of the industry. So I think a lot of recent times, right, we see that there's a lot of rethinking through the past marketing tactics, right? And I think in the crypto world, as you probably see on TV, they tend to be very aggressive, right? Because these companies are known for their crazy marketing budgets, which see them sponsoring some of the biggest F1 team. Some of them even actually purchase a stadium in the name. And then lastly, not to mention how they're really just spending big bucks. And the main aim of it is just to ensure that their logo is kind of visible to most of the population in their target audience, right? And really just this idea of promoting like brand awareness. So while such spending goes unquestioned in good times, I think there's this recent, thinking that, marketing needs to start thinking about how to reduce costs, or really because of the onset of the long crypto winter, which at the moment, I think we don't see any sign of abating. So with that, these marketing teams are now starting to see the importance of, using data and not just saying like, hey, this is a hunch that I have, right? But really to understand which channels are truly the one that could be helping them to not just bring in prospective users, right? I think in the past, there has been huge emphasis on saying, hey, what is my DAU looking like, right? My daily active users, or like, what is my weekly active users like? But I think there hasn't really been a lot of thought around, like which of the users are actually giving me a higher customer lifetime value. And this is, the kind of like direction that you should be kind of like going towards. So that aside, I think like now is actually really the best time to start relooking your current user flow and possibly even improve on any potential friction point, because you might not have the chance to do so previously, right? And just one tip from me, right? If you're really looking to start doubling down on this, one of the best way to do is really to start building out your customer lifecycle chart. And why? Really because like if you do that, it really gives you a very good idea at first glance which group of users. And when I talk about group of users, I'm talking about, say, are these your retained users? Are these your new users? Are these your resurrected users? And you really want to know which of these users actually make up the bulk of your total user base, right? So if you've seen that actually in the past 6 months, right, the reason why I have such a high DAU, it's really because I had a lot of new users. Then you might be you have to start thinking about, okay, then how do I make sure that these new users actually do become my retained users as well? I think secondly, what's been up on the radar is definitely retention, right? And I think retention has been, the biggest challenge by far for any organization, let alone a crypto organization, right? And it's become even more important during this difficult time because I think across the board, we've seen a very drastic decline in the number of active users, right? And this is largely due to the lack of confidence in the market and not to mention that, the high volatility nature of the industry. With that, organizations are starting to respond by, really thinking about, okay, how do I keep my user base? So some of them actually launch mission-based scoring system. Others go one step further and say, I'm going to like launch this very comprehensive learn and earn program that really kind of drives home the whole value proposition of blockchain. Others have it very simple and say, okay, so long as you log in, you'll earn points. So all these initiatives is really just to ensure that, they remain at the top of the mind. So while I do agree that these are very great initiatives to have, right, it is also very imperative to ensure that these precious resources that are being allocated, right, are the right cost, because you need to kind of analyze whether or not these programs / initiatives are effective in, say, raising the retention rate at a 14 days, 30 days, and even perhaps a long run of, say, a 3-month standpoint, right? And if they are effective, how so are they effective? So I think, Pete, we talk about how, retention might be the next big thing that, all these organizations want to actually focus on. So then my question is really like, how do we then go about improving, the current retention rate, given that, it's been even harder to just get these users to even log on to the platform?
Yeah, totally. I thoroughly agree that this kind of the big conclusion is that retention is going to just be that much more of an important metric to focus on in the coming months and quarters. So, the companies that we work with are really working to understand what personas of users have really retained over the test of time, so that they can continue to build their platforms for those types of users that are going to be successful and have a good experience. So today, I think definitely, like you mentioned, we should take a little bit more in-depth look at the types of retention analysis that you can do in Mixpanel. So we have kind of a generic demo data set here where we've done some of what you were discussing, Veronica, where in an insights chart, one of our 4 core reports, you can plot these user lifecycle cohorts, and it really tells that whole story of, is that marketing spend that we've really put in to acquire these new users, is that resulting in retained users? Are our various campaigns reactivating users? And that's really important to start with in your retention analysis, because it doesn't tell the whole picture just to look at, a simple average retention curve. And then beyond that, what I wanted to spend some time talking about is, the clear value prop of product analytics is the quickness with which you can kind of experiment. So, you can, as I mentioned, obviously plot a retention curve with, made their first deposit or trade, and then how often they're coming back to place a trade or do a swap or buy an NFT or what have you. And then the real benefit is that with our data model of having these attributes about those actions performed, and also being able to create cohorts of users that have done certain activities, we can really start to test a hypothesis. So, say we are pretty confident that hardware wallet users are, much better retained, but with a simple breakdown of a cohort, we can really easily determine, after 1 or 2 weeks, someone who has connected a hardware wallet, they're retaining at, 30% higher, 20% higher. So it really lets you see something that you, like Veronica, you mentioned hunches earlier. It really lets you test those hunches to see how relevant they are. So here we've done a bunch of different examples where, there's a way where you can break down by attributes. So what I mean by that is like event properties or user properties, like, where did we acquire that user? So, if we acquired them from Facebook or a referral, do they have that more of that smile curve of like an uptick at a certain point that we are seeing those users retain? Or does it does the type of cryptocurrency they first deposited, Petecoin or Veronica, do those impact their long-term retention? And then finally, for this one, again, it's does their first trade, you can kind of pick whether it was their first deposit or their first trade really easily and quickly. And again, dig into those results. And then I kind of want to end with some more complex examples where, maybe you want to, rather than just a demographic or a quality about the user, we want to see if a user's behavior impacts that retention. And so with cohorts, and you can really quickly build them in line here, we can assess, does a certain number of trades or swaps over a certain period of time, of course, someone with 5 or more is going to retain more, but we can see how much more they really retain. And then, a drop between 3 and 4 isn't that much, but, if we get the users past their first or second, that's really going to drive long-term success. And then the final example, I want to click into the actual cohort because I think it really highlights the complexity here. We can actually do not only did they perform a certain number of trades, but we can do a count of the actual cryptocurrencies of those trades. And so what I'm saying here is, I want to see if users who perform trades with one, two, or three or more different types of cryptocurrency, if we can get them sort of to be interested in more different types, how much that impacts whether they're sticking around. So yeah, I think there's obviously a lot more to retention analysis than just these quick tips, and there's no silver bullet in what is a successful user and how do we retain them. But this gives you a bunch of options if you can kind of start thinking about all these different dimensions that you can analyze retention over time. So yeah, really appreciate all of your time, and hope this provided some insight about where you can focus your time in a tough time. So thanks so much.
Thank you everyone, and I hope that today's session was really useful. And then I think what Pete provided was just really the tip of an iceberg. So really hope to see you guys digging more into your data. And then of course, if you have any questions for any of us, do reach out to us on any of our LinkedIn handles. Thank you.